What is going on, guys? Jason Burke here, Styles Clash for Life, coming at you on YouTube with another edition of The Drive-In, where I talk about recent movies that are in theaters that you guys want to hear my feedback on. I'm going to review today the most anticipated release of 2018 in the horror world, Halloween 2018. Executive produced by John Carpenter, who is finally back for the first time in a long time in the Halloween series, starring Jamie Lee Curtis. And this review is going to be tough because, number one, I just finally saw this movie last night, Monday night. It is the butt crack of dawn here, Tuesday morning. I'm feeling a little flu-y and coffee, so please excuse me if I start coughing or something. I'm feeling a little bit under the weather. Very tired, but I wanted to bring you guys this review. Obviously, as you can see, I am a huge fan of the Halloween series. It is my all-time favorite slasher movie, my all-time favorite movie of any genre. I love Halloween so much. You see Michael Myers in the background, behind me back there. I love this series, and I was very, very excited. Despite the fact that I hate remakes and reboots, and I don't like the fact that this sequel retcons everything after the first Halloween back in '78. Everything after the first Halloween does not count for this movie. This is a brand new direct sequel to the original Halloween. But I was very excited to see it, and I've got to say there are more positives than negatives. This is going to be a spoiler-free review. Usually I do spoilers, but it's a brand new movie. It's very hyped, and most people haven't seen it yet. So I'm going to try and do this review and talk about it without spoiling any major plot points or anything, so there won't be any spoilers. So if you have not seen the movie, you can still watch this review. But with that being said, it's going to be hard to discuss without spoiling anything because I usually don't do that, and I didn't write down a whole lot of stuff. So this is going to be a tough review to do, but please stick with me while I at least talk about the finer talking points of Halloween 2018. Overall, more positives than negatives. I like this film. I wasn't blown away by it. It wasn't, can't miss, perfect, amazing movie. It didn't blow it out of the water, but it was a very solid movie with a lot of positives. It was written and directed by Danny McBride and David Gordon Green. Written by McBride and Gordon Green, directed by David Gordon Green, starring Jamie Lee Curtis, and James Jude Courtney was Michael Myers, and Nick Castle also played Michael Myers in some scenes with the breathing and with a couple of select scenes. Nick Castle, of course, was the original Michael Myers, so that's a positive right there. I think both James Jude Courtney and Nick Castle did a great job playing Michael. First and foremost, the shape moved just like Michael always does. It felt like the same character 40 years ago, just aged. So the mannerisms and the head tilts and the movements were very much like the original Michael, which was great. Another one of the major biggest positives in this movie is John Carpenter's score. John Carpenter executive produced, and he was back doing the score, obviously. And this had a nice mix of the original Halloween music mixed with some new Halloween music. So you had some of the same songs from the original Halloween, some of the same exact tracks, but had different keys. Some of the old songs were just played in a lower key or a higher key, or slowed down or sped up. That was great. John Carpenter included a couple of original riffs and a couple of original songs in this movie. Some nice beats that kind of gave you the same feel of nostalgia that the original Halloween did. So a nice mix of the old score that we know and love from the original movies, and a couple of new adjustments and tweaks for this one as well. So the soundtrack was excellent. Cinematography was excellent in this movie. I really enjoyed the way they shot things. They had a bunch of nice cuts showing Michael standing in the fields, stalking around, which was well acted. I really enjoyed how the camera moved around. They had a couple scenes which were nods to the original movie, where there was just like one particular scene where it was like 5 minutes straight, just following Myers around with no cuts. They didn't do a whole lot of editing with some long takes. They did some really nice spins and pans on the camera. The editing was well done as well. So I really enjoyed the way this was shot. It felt like the original movie. It felt like some shots were extended just to give you that feel of the first Halloween, and that was very well done also. Jamie Lee Curtis in this movie is a star. Obviously, the story of this is Jamie Lee Curtis 40 years later, waiting for Michael's return. She has been affected by the events 40 years ago. She has spent her entire life preparing and raising her family, her daughter and their granddaughter, to kind of be the same way. So it's kind of ostracized her from the family. She's kind of like the psychopath. She's a little weathered, a little crazy, over anal, OCD about preparation. She has this gun shelter. She's got this house with booby traps. And the family has kind of looked at her as the black sheep now. So because of how obsessed with Michael she is. So she kind of is thrust into this Dr. Loomis role now. There is another doctor that replaces Loomis. We'll discuss him later. But she's kind of like the one that knows Michael very well, the one inside his head, the one that's ready for him to come back home. She plays that foil to Michael very, very well in this. The scenes that focus on her are very strong. Her character's gotten even stronger than last time. I really enjoy all the scenes that focus on her and her craziness. The comedy in this is both hit and miss. The comedy is a positive and a negative. Danny McBride obviously is a comedy guy, so his writing obviously had comedic style to it. Sometimes, like there's a little boy that's being babysat in this movie, he's hilarious. There are some lines early on in the film where the father character, which would be the son-in-law of Jamie Lee Curtis, he's really funny early on in parts. The daughter's got a couple funny lines in parts. But then other times, it is totally out of place. There are some wasted scenes in this movie, which is a major negative for me, where you could take 3 or 4 scenes out of this movie and it wouldn't impact anything. There feels like there are some moments where they put some comedy in spaces where there shouldn't be comedy. There are some spaces where it should be tension-filled and there's a murder going on, or they're cutting back and forth between Michael murdering somebody and some random comedic scene with 2 characters just joking around about things that are inconsequential that have no bearing on the movie at all. And there are some times when Michael is stalking somebody that the characters seem a little too lighthearted, too jokey, when they should be very scared and upset. So it kind of diffuses the tension a little bit in a negative way. So I think more often than not, the comedy was handled in a positive way in this movie, but sometimes it breaks up the tension in moments when the acting should be focused and the camera should be focused and you should be getting really, wondering where Michael is or wondering what's going on, or they're cutting back and forth and there's just jokes in places there shouldn't be jokes. So the comedy is at times very good, but at times very distracting and takes away from the movie. Same with the characters in this movie. I thought that Jamie Lee Curtis's character, of course, was great. Michael was well done. The reporters early on that are trying to do a documentary on Michael, they're pretty good. But there's a couple characters in this movie that don't need to really be there. There's a babysitter that really doesn't have much effect. There's a couple characters in here that are just cannon fodder for Michael to kill. There are just several times where the father character is kind of useless in this. The doctor character, I think, is kind of useless in this. They took a really weird turn with him. There is kind of another doctor character that was Loomis's like understudy. Dr. Loomis was his mentor. I like the fact they mentioned Loomis in this a couple times. They make note of the fact that Loomis is, a big part of the first movie, which is great. They should have done that. I'm glad they did it. But the new Loomis is a very boring version of Loomis. He tries to be too much like Loomis, and he comes across like Donald Pleasance light. He's not the best actor in this case. He seems kind of boring, and then he really adds nothing much to the film until they do a major character move with him later in the movie, which makes 0 sense to me. It shows some potential, but it really comes out of left field and really makes no sense, and then it gets wasted like 45 seconds later. So they do this very strange choice that seems kind of more negative than positive, and they don't really even explore what the choice could have been. It could have been interesting if they had done something with it, but nothing was done with it. It was wasted. So some characters in this movie don't need to be there. Just like the comedy, there are some spots where the characters shine. Like I think the granddaughter is good. I think the police officer who was there in the first movie, he's in this movie and he has some good moments. I like his acting. He's very solid. And there's other characters, like I said, the father, the doctor. These characters are there for really no reason and are just kind of wasted. So characters are hit or miss here. All in all, the tension I think was good. I think the location manager deserves a shout out here. I think the ambiance was good. They did a nice job of putting Michael Myers back in Haddonfield. They had a lot of scenes with like the fall leaves and the pumpkins. They used a lot of pumpkins in this. It felt like a Halloween movie. One of the biggest things you're looking for when you watch Halloween is the ambiance. It's an environmental style movie. It's why the first one's so good. It's why part 4 is so beloved. Because it feels like fall, it feels like Halloween. You see the children trick-or-treating, you see the pumpkins, the house is decorated. Everything in this felt like a Halloween movie. So big props to the location manager, and the way it was shot and the places that it was shot in felt like Halloween. So that was well done also. Tension was hit or miss. There were times where the tension was taken away because you saw too much of Michael at points. They showed his face so much that you're kind of like, where's the tension? And other moments, the tension is very, very good. At times when Jamie Lee Curtis is looking around for Michael and you're waiting for the big jump, which worked several times. The jump scares were effective when they were used, but there weren't too many of them used. So I like when it was done, but it wasn't done enough. So there's a lot of things in this movie that are sometimes hit, sometimes miss. It's very much down the middle. Some things they use effectively, other things they don't. One of the biggest positives that I loved in this was many callbacks to the original movies. There's a callback to H2O in this movie. There's a callback in a classroom scene to the first movie. There's a callback with a balcony to the first movie. There's a callback to the closet in the first movie. They reference a lot of the original movie and put little twists on the way things happened in the first film. So I really enjoyed the fan service. It was a nice companion piece and a nice ode to the one that came before it. So that was a positive too. But all in all, I think the pacing was a little weird. It was an hour and 45 minutes. Again, they could have taken 2 or 3 scenes out and 2 or 3 characters out and would have made it even better. Last thing I'll talk about without spoiling it is the ending. It was very abrupt. It was another callback to a previous film. But the ending was very sudden, very out of nowhere. It was a good third act. The tension built nicely in the third act. The whole final battle with Michael and Jamie was done very, very well. The other characters stepped up and had some nice evolution in that battle as well. But whenever it comes to the actual ending itself, it kind of comes out of nowhere and it's kind of left like, was that the ending? They could have done something much more impactful. They did a nice job building in the final 20 minutes to this ending. The build was great, but the actual ending itself really felt like, whoa, that was very sudden and made no sense. There's some resolution there, but I guess could be left open to interpretation as well. And again, it's hard to talk about it without spoiling it. But all in all, because of the way Michael was played, because of the ambiance, because of the score, because of the tension when it was used, because of some of the great characters in this movie, again, it was more positive than negative. So they could have done more with it. They could have cut some things out. They could have squared it off a little better, made a bit of a better ending, and done more with tension and more with Michael's pop-outs and stuff like that. So good but not great. Some things they missed the boat on, like the doctor's character thing that happened there, and a couple other characters that were just being funny too often when there was no need to be funny, and misplaced comedy. But all in all, as a fan of the first one, the callbacks, the score, having Carpenter on board, this was a good story, a good companion piece to the first movie. I like this a lot. I'm glad it's breaking box office records, and I'm excited to see if and when they do another one, because this is making money, so I assume they're going to do another Halloween. But all in all, while this missed some opportunities and didn't do exactly what it could have done, there were moments of brilliance in this movie that make this well worth seeing for any Halloween fan. So if you like Halloween, whether or not you're excited about this movie, I'd say go see this. It is worth seeing for fans of the original because of all the fan service and the callbacks to the originals. I think you'll enjoy this. I give this movie a 6.5 out of 10. Nowhere near the blowaway that I hoped for and kind of expected in parts, but this movie is still a very solid movie overall. 6.5 out of 10 for me. What did you guys think of Halloween if you have seen it? Are you looking forward to another? Let's talk in the comments down below. We can talk spoilers on my personal pages if you guys want to check those out. My Twitter is @jayburke, Jayburke. Hit me up on there. We can talk spoilers as well. Tell me in the comments what you think. And that has been finally the drive-in, guys. I will see you guys next time with another review.